I guess you've heard of the Sweet 16. This would be a Sweet 16 show number 16 right here on West Virginia Live with Gold and Blue Dude. Great to have you as always, man.
I appreciate you having me on, man. I love doing this, man. I finally found somebody that's just as obsessed with college football as I am. Maybe even more.
Maybe. We could have a debate about that some night, or have a vote. Take a vote.
Definitely more knowledgeable. I will give you that. You
I don't
definitely
know
are
about
more
that.
knowledgeable. Yes.
You're catching up, if not. So this is our 16th show. We appreciate everybody being here, and we are having a good time each and every week. I think these shows have been stellar. We typically have Travis Kenobi on here and Justin Walker, Coos's Corner. So check out their work. And of course, this is the guy. If this guy right here doesn't join us for our West Virginia channel, I don't think we have one right now. So appreciate you, Chris.
No problem, man. Appreciate you.
Well, let's get to the news of the day, or news of the week, basically. Defensive lineman Akeem Mesidor has entered the transfer portal. Pretty productive player. Hate to see him go. And it's just kind of odd. We were talking about it before we started to record, that it seems like it was a difficult decision for him even.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I'm getting out of this is this was not foreseen. Whenever Neil Brown did his press conference, he said usually you can tell by the way they talk, body language, the way they act, that something's different, that something's about to happen, possibly entering the transfer portal, something like that. And with Akeem, there was none of those signs. And that's why, it's kind of a shock to him. And the thing that's different with Akeem, besides not showing any signs, is he's the first Neil Brown recruit to enter the transfer portal. We've had West Virginia's had a bunch of guys enter the transfer portal, just like pretty much anybody in the nation. But this is the first Neil Brown recruit that entered the transfer portal. And that's kind of the silver lining that I've been trying to paint West Virginia fans as far as the previous transfers. So at this one, it's a little more difficult to paint a silver lining around, other than, if we were going to lose somebody, defensive line was probably the best group to lose somebody if you were going to, because we're pretty deep on the defensive line. But having said that, it's a big hit. He was one of the leading tacklers last year, and West Virginia will miss him. That is for sure.
Well, he makes a comment here. I don't know where this was posted, whether this was on Twitter or where it was, because I'm reading off the SB Nation site. But Mesidor said, I've decided to transfer for overall well-being and in pursuit of a better environment for my development on and off the field. These last 48 hours have been extremely challenging, and at times I felt unsafe on campus.
Yeah, I don't even know what he's talking about. He's really the first player that I've heard say those type of words as far as unsafe and stuff like that. A lot of people referenced and I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but this is just what I've heard. A lot of people referenced a random stabbing that happened in Morgantown about a month ago. But that's it. And I don't even know how true that is. So that, to me, that's kind of an off the wall comment that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I really don't know where he's coming from there.
Yeah, he kind of gets into that a little bit later in his statement. So that's Akeem Mesidor moving on from West Virginia. As you mentioned to me before we started to record, he's got a visit to Penn State. I had seen a list with some other schools. I don't want to try to guess what they were off the top of my head. Virginia Tech comes to mind, but I lost track of that list. But, here's a guy who you would think would have emerged even more so than what he produced in 2021 with 38 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, and 4.5 sacks. So it's a pretty substantial loss.
Yeah, he's going to be missed. One of the other things that I saw was he wants to be a defensive end, and we were using him as a tackle. And to me, he's such an impact player that I think, Neil Brown would have moved him to defensive end or used him in some type of way at the defensive end position. So I'm not really buying that excuse either. Basically, he's acting like that Neil Brown locked him in to nose tackle and didn't give him any other choice. And the only way that Akeem Mesidor was going to be able to play defensive end is if he were to transfer, and that was the only way he was going to play defensive end, and that's what he wanted to play, defensive end. I can't really buy into that either. I don't see Neil Brown doing that.
We appreciate everybody being here. And Joey, of course, the guy that makes his channel go, is letting everybody know in the comments section here in the chat that we are simulcasting these shows right now on the Voice of College Football on the main channel, but also the West Virginia channel. Once we get the West Virginia channel up and running, we would love everyone to head on over there and for that to be the destination. I've got 25 team channels. We do a number of other live streams, Ohio State, Michigan, etc. And those live streams are just on those channels. But to get this jump started and to hopefully move some people that watch us on the main channel over to the West Virginia channel, we've been simulcasting to get us started. But subscribe to the West Virginia channel here at the Voice of College Football. And, of course, check out Gold and Blue Dude's channel. And even if you're not a West Virginia fan, he loves college football. He talks everybody, and get on over there and check out the content.
I wanted to add to that real quick, Mark. A lot of fans, they kind of complain, oh, we need a bigger following or we need a bigger presence. Well, this is why we created this particular brand, because me and Mark got together. He saw that, West Virginia does have a big presence because Gold and Blue Dude was growing. So if we want to show the nation what the West Virginia fan base is all about, then not only hit the subscribe button, you need to tell other people about it and share these videos. That's how this channel grows. And that's how you want to show people, the fan base, how big it is and how strong it is, dedicated. That's how you do it. Share this channel and talk to people about it.
And once I knew about the news concerning Mesidor, I found it interesting and have yet to dive into this article, so we can kind of dive in together, because I don't know if, because of what Mesidor had to say about the things that we just talked about, whether Neil Brown felt like he needed to respond or was being asked. But let me pull up this article. It was in the Charlotte Gazette, and Neil Brown responds to. So you can find this again in the Charlotte Gazette, but Neil Brown says, we don't have a culture problem here. And took to the podium on, this was following his team's first practice. First day we put the ball down and let them play. Made an unscheduled statement in front of the media on Thursday announcing the defensive lineman Akeem Mesidor is transferred or entered the transfer portal. And Neil Brown says, quote, I can tell you that I'm very confident, and you can talk to the kids. We don't have a culture problem here. Members of the media have been at practice enough. You would notice you've had access to almost half of the practices we've had here. If there was something really sticking out, you all would notice it. You don't hide it. Those things really stick out. And if you look at the sidelines and see how our kids interact and staff and player interactions, those are really clear to me. So I don't know if he felt like he needed to make this statement because of what Mesidor had to say about campus and anything else he said about the program.
Well, I think it's a combination of that and what I mentioned earlier, how this was a Neil Brown recruit. And in the press conference, he used the word sad and hurt, and said that he thought that Akeem was not making a wise decision. Now, he wasn't trash talking Akeem. He wished him well, said he's going to have a lot of success at the college level and the NFL. He just thinks that this was, if you read between the lines, it was almost like Neil Brown was saying somebody was enticing him to enter the transfer portal. That's the way he worded things. He said he was sad and hurt because of this, because he had invested so much time and effort. Money, travel, all that stuff. He traveled to Florida to recruit him and to Canada, which is where Akeem Mesidor's parents live, in 24 hours. So you're talking about a flight to Florida and then a flight to Canada and then a flight back to Morgantown, all within about 24 to 36 hours. So he was hurt because of, the big investment that he had in Akeem, and he wanted to see it through. So that there was a bunch of things that went into why he did the press conference. And Neil Brown is not known for doing impromptu press conferences, and that's why a lot of people are making a big deal out of it, because Neil Brown doesn't do that. And it's because he had a lot invested into this young man, and he feels like maybe, people are getting in his ear and flashing things in front of him and making him make a decision that's not so wise.
West Virginia fans, it gets no better. We got Golden Blue Dude here talking up Mountaineers. So please leave your comments and questions there in the live chat, and we will get to them. And of course, the buzz for now 3 to 4 weeks has been about JT Daniels. He's looking at Oregon State, Missouri, and West Virginia most notably, and he is set to take a visit to Morgantown next weekend, the weekend of the 9th. So everybody's got to be on their best behavior, roll out the red carpet, and hopefully he makes that move.
Yeah, that would be a big uplift that West Virginia needs right now.
And absolutely, we've got our trolls here as well. So we welcome all fan bases. So Florida fan jumping in here as well. And I don't think there's any question JT Daniels wins the job if he makes that decision. I think he's looking at 3 teams where he's going to win the job in Missouri, Oregon State, and West Virginia. And he wouldn't
be looking at West Virginia if he didn't think he could, win the job outright. So that's not really an issue in my eyes.
Oh, Tim is letting me know my mic is not necessarily on. Let me check that out. What happened there? You are right, sir. And
I've done stuff like that. It happens.
I don't even have my mic in the StreamYard drop down.
Ooh.
That's weird. To even choose it. Wonder what happened there. I don't know. I've already done a record and a live stream today. Everything was fine. So
I can hear you okay.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just have to go with it right now. Joey's telling us that you've got but anyway, Tim, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. Appreciate that. And I apologize for the mic. I don't know. Nothing's changed and nothing's set up differently. So I don't know what that is. But Joey's letting us know that you've got a special guest coming on the show Monday night.
Yeah. Oh, probably the biggest guest as far as, a West Virginia source that I've had on my show so far. Very excited. He just actually, his last day working with West Virginia University, I believe, was Friday. He's going out on his own and doing a podcast, kind of collaboration. But this guy is West Virginia royalty, and he knows what's going on at West Virginia for sure.
All right, good stuff. So what was his position at WVU?
I don't know his exact position, but Joey was the one that got in contact with him. So if Joey can explain that in the chat, I'm sure he'll do that. But Dale is not only is he an inside source, but he is diehard Mountaineer fan. So whenever you do an interview with him, you got to make sure that you're not bashing West Virginia. He's diehard West Virginia through and through. So I think that conversation in that interview is going to be very, very interesting. And I would encourage any West Virginia fan to watch that interview. It's going to be a big one.
Hey everyone, Joey has left the link to the Voice of College Football West Virginia channel right there. You see it on the screen, but if you go into the chat, you can grab it right there and subscribe. Please get us to 1,000 subs. That is a mile marker, a major mark for any YouTube channel, for YouTube to take you seriously, start pushing those videos out into traffic and really blow up the channel. We got to help, get your help to get us to 1,000. Rob's got a question here, going back into history here. What is the general feeling about Rich Rod from the West Virginia fan base?
It's really right down the middle, because some you got to realize some West Virginia fans, they'll hold a grudge forever. I mean, you're never going to change their mind. It is what it is. Don't even waste your energy. But then you have some fans that remember, like myself. I remember the glory days. I remember, beating Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, almost going to the national championship. Double-digit win seasons, almost guaranteed under Pat White and Rich Rod. And the fans that remember all that stuff and have gone through the turmoil of, the Big East dissolving, having to jump ship to the Big 12, not really fitting in with the Big 12. Only one double-digit win season since I think 2010, if I'm not mistaken. I would actually be all right with Rich Rod, and most fans that aren't holding that grudge would also be all right with Rich Rod. So it's plain and simple. You have the half that's holding the grudge, and you have the half that's not. If you talk to the half that has the grudge, they don't want anything to do with him. And if you talk with the half that don't hold the grudge, they want him back now. There's no in between, really.
Tim and others, you can let me know if my audio sounds any better now. I don't think anything's changed, but I have switched one thing that I don't think is related, but it's about all I could think of. All right. Appreciate everybody being here one more time. Joey's left the link in the chat. Please subscribe to the West Virginia channel, hear the voice of college football, and get on over to the Golden Blue Dudes channel right here on YouTube as well. Yeah, it's pretty much been all downhill for Rich Rod since he left West Virginia. That was the pinnacle for him. I think people forget that don't follow West Virginia football, how good it was when he was there. Look up the record, look up the rankings, how good he was at West Virginia, and of course took what most people would do in that position. He went to Michigan, and he just couldn't. He was taking much different personnel and trying to fit his offense into it, and it just wasn't the right. If this was happening now, it wouldn't be a big deal, but at the time, that was just culture shock, football shock to Michigan football to try to slam those two things together, and it just didn't work. And then Arizona happened, and he was having an okay time at Arizona. He wasn't tearing things up, but they're generally going 7-6 and going to bowl games, and then had some issues off the field, and his career is pretty much derailed since then.
Yeah, I can't put my finger on what exactly happened other than, maybe karma. I don't know. Because, West Virginia, we were a perennial top 10 team preseason, final poll during his last 3-4 years at West Virginia. So, a lot of people think that he got a big head and just wanted more money. So off to Michigan he went. But honestly, I did some research on this as a West Virginia fan because you got to know this type of stuff. It's historic. Rich Rod left because he asked for a raise for his assistants, and West Virginia would not grant it. So it wasn't that he, was just looking for this big-time head coach, names in the light type of thing. He wanted raises for his assistants for them to stay. West Virginia said thanks, but no thanks, and Rich Rod left town. And after that, didn't do very well at Arizona or Michigan. And then Arizona, he did okay, but not great. And then I know he was an analyst for Ole Miss. It's just, and he's fallen out of grace. Where's he at now? I know he's in like a group of 5 team squad now. I don't think he's a head coach, but I think he's like an analyst or something.
I lost track of him after he was at Ole Miss a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I'm thinking like a Sun Belt team or something.
He was just at Ole Miss maybe the season before last.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's at he's the head coach at Jacksonville State. So
Jacksonville State. Okay. That's
starting the season. So yeah, he was at Ole Miss in 2019. That's the last time I remember him being around as offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. Then in 2021, he was out of football for a year in 2020. Yeah. Then last season he was at Louisiana Monroe as offensive.
That's who I was thinking of. There you go.
Now he gets a Jacksonville State head coaching job, which
they're going into Conference USA, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And November 30th, so just a couple months ago, he gets the Jacksonville State job.
Yep. They just beat Florida State last year.
Yes, they did.
What? I know this is a West Virginia channel, but Conference USA is it's a real head scratcher. Honestly, after the new realignment, it's going to be bottom of the barrel, like below
Yeah.
MAC.
Yeah.
Why didn't they try to pick off teams from the MAC? I mean, if you look at the teams that they went out and got, Liberty's really the only, decent team that they went out and got. Why didn't they try to pick off the MAC? Like, that's what I thought they were going to do. I don't understand Conference USA.
That's a great question. So they lose. UAB is the big loss for them. UAB's their best program, and has been for the last 4 or 5 years since they brought football back. So they lose Rice, they lose UAB. I don't have it right in front of me. North Texas, Charlotte. Those might be the 4. There might be one more, and they lose.
I think they lost 6, didn't they? UTSA and
6. UTSA, who was their best team last year, won the conference championship.
Yeah.
So the Sun Belt bulks up and is so much better, with some relatively strong programs there. A couple, Texas San Antonio and UAB in particular. And Conference USA goes the FCS route. Sam Houston State, James Madison. I don't know. Maybe.
I thought they were going to go for teams like your team, Kent State, Akron, Ohio, Miami of Ohio. Like that made a lot of sense to me. And it would be a win-win because, they would be keeping a leg up. Because if you look at what the other conferences did, that's what they did. They picked apart the other conference, so they jumped as far as strength, and they pulled the other conference below them. Conference USA didn't do that. They went out and got, Liberty, that's a good get, but the others are questionable. If they would have went out and got some members from the MAC, not only would they strengthen themselves, but they would have weakened the MAC. So that was my whole mentality. So I was not seeing what Conference USA, why they did what they did. They look like a sinking ship, not much of a conference at all outside of Liberty.
Yeah, they do. And I was responding to a call the other night about the American Conference. And certainly, they did what they could do to just kind of maintain membership. But, that's a severe drop off in losing. They lose the 3 best programs.
Yep.
Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati. The 3 best programs in the conference gone. And the replacements don't even come close there. So, the American Conference had some arguments here in the last few years of trying to be a Power 6 conference. Well, those days are gone. They are down in the previous Conference USA type level. And I don't know about comparing the MAC and Conference USA and how those schools in the MAC, if they were approached by Conference USA, would perceive their current status in the MAC versus going to Conference USA.
Yeah.
Because Conference USA is kind of this hodgepodge of teams all over the place. And that's pretty much how it started. That's how they got their name. Yeah, they weren't tied to a region like the other conferences, and they were like, oh, we'll just call it Conference USA because they were all over the place, but much better all over the place with schools like Houston at the time. But I don't know, the MAC, to its credit, it has an identity. It's very Ohio-based.
Yep.
Like half the conference is in Ohio. Toledo,
I would say Ohio, like a Ohio Valley. I know there's a conference called the Ohio Valley. But when I think of the MAC, I think of the Ohio Valley because most of it's in Ohio, and then the teams that aren't are still in that strip that's considered the Ohio Valley.
Yeah. Almost the entire conference is in Ohio, Michigan, Indiana.
Yep.
So they do have an identity there. So, but I don't know, to your point, I don't know if the Kent State being courted by and offered by Conference USA would look at Conference USA to be any better than the MAC, or would think, we're just going to get lost playing Rice and Charlotte and traveling all over the country. While here, I'm not going to say it's a big deal by any stretch, because outside of Ohio State's Ohio State in the state of Ohio. When Akron and Kent get together, or Akron and Toledo, is it a big deal? No. But there still is rivalry that's very close in proximity. And, there's a lot of history there.
Yeah, that's why I think if Conference USA could have gotten like 3 or 4 of them together, it would have been fine, but maybe not 1 or 2. I just found that interesting whenever I saw the AAC and the Sun Belt, kind of pick those teams out of Conference USA. Then my brain went to, okay, well, the next step is Conference USA is going to go to the MAC and try to get some of their teams, and they did the complete opposite.
Yeah. So it is, at least the Conference USA allowed those teams to leave, because for a time there, it appeared as though there was going to be a big legal war waged, because they weren't going to allow them to leave, because contractually they could have fought to have them stay.
Yeah, that was finally settled in court, and they're going to allow those teams from Conference USA to leave for the Sun Belt on July 1st. I saw a question in there earlier where they asked if the Big 12 should lose its Power 5 status because they lost Oklahoma and Texas. My answer to that would be, if they didn't add anybody and just lost Oklahoma and Texas, there would be a big argument for them to lose their Power 5 status. But because they added Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, and BYU, I think they're still a Power 5 conference. I mean, if you put them head-to-head against the Pac-12, who's considered a Power 5 conference, absolutely. I think the new Big 12 is still a Power 5.
So the way things stand right now, so they're basically netting 2 additional teams. Now, those 4 are certainly nowhere in the league, even putting all 4 together, of the Texas Oklahoma loss. So it's a hit to the conference, no doubt.
Yeah.
But if you look at, and I ran a video at the time that all these moves were made to look at, okay, what is the truth about Houston, BYU, UCF, and Cincinnati in regards to what have they done against the Power 5 in the last 5 years? And it's pretty respectable. They've all played about 500 ball against the Power 5. So they're not going to. So the Big 12 is taking a huge hit in terms of money and all that other stuff off the field. But just talking about on the field, their ability to challenge the other big boys in the other conferences has taken a huge hit. But in terms of the strength and the depth of the conference, those teams can play in any conference. Houston, BYU, UCF, and Cincinnati, and play well. They're not going to win the conference, but they're not going to get embarrassed by any stretch going to play in any of the Power 5 conferences.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, BYU was undefeated against the Pac-12.
Yes.
And didn't Baylor beat BYU, but it was a good game?
Good game. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought happened. So, I mean, BYU's, I don't know if they were considered Group of 5 or Power 5. I know they were independent, but most of their schedule has been Power 5 for a while now. I mean, they basically had a Power 5 schedule, so they've been tested. It's just they didn't have a conference schedule. Now, last year it was Pac-12 heavy, and a lot of people, quote, proclaimed them as the Pac-12 South champs because they beat every stinking one of them. So, I think BYU adds a lot to the Big 12. I think the new Big 12 is still better than the Pac-12. And it's close between the new Big 12 and the ACC. I'd have to see a few years of the new Big 12 before I actually made that comparison. But I can say with confidence that they would still be above the Pac-12.
The Big 12 is getting those 4 programs, certainly Cincinnati at its best, and the other 3 close to their best. So they're getting very strong programs. If they would have gotten Houston at another time, or UCF at another time, 0-12 before Scott Frost showed up. There have been different times for all those programs. Cincinnati was a 4-8 team, Luke Fickell's first year. But right now, they're all top, certainly Cincinnati at the forefront, top 40 programs in the country right now. And say what you will about, again, them not being able to play elite against Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, etc. at the top, maybe that's been stripped away from them. But if you look at that league, like if they started playing this next year, minus Texas, Oklahoma, add those four, like there's a lot of good football games. Like I don't know who's going to win that conference.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And then you look at the current members of the Big 12. I mean, you have Oklahoma State and Baylor. They're super hot right now. West Virginia is still in rebuild. How long they're going to be in rebuild, I don't know. Iowa State, they have a good head coach, but they stumble in games that they shouldn't stumble in. And then you have teams like Texas Tech and Kansas State that have good years on and off. So to me, the Big 12 comes down to teams that have a great season. Do they match up with the other teams that have a great season, or is it going to be, kind of staggered where, 1 year it's going to be BYU, they have an amazing season, go 11-1, chance to get the playoffs. Next year Baylor, next year Oklahoma State, or are there going to be teams at the top consistently? Like, is it going to be Oklahoma State, Baylor, and BYU from here on out? It's hard to predict.
Absolutely. What I would like to do, and we should do this in a future live stream, West Virginia Live here every Friday night. We typically hit you at 8 p.m. Eastern time, everybody, is now that they've both got 12 teams, seed the Big 12, 1 through 12, of what we expect them to be, not necessarily based on 2021, but generally what's the 1 through 12 ranking of the Big 12. Put that against the Pac-12 and really make a line-by-line comparison. But I tend to agree with you, even without Texas, Oklahoma, that the Big 12 is better. The Pac-12 has really dropped in 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah. I think the problem with the Pac-12, this might sound weird, is it's almost like there's too much parity in the Pac-12. If you look at the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, even the Big 10, every year there's one team that dominates the conference, and that's how they get in. With the Big 10, usually it's Ohio State, but last year it was Michigan. With the ACC, it's Clemson. Last year, Clemson didn't dominate. What happened? They missed the playoffs. Big 12, usually it was Oklahoma that dominated the conference. They didn't do it last year. Big 12 missed the playoffs. And then there's the SEC. 9 times out of 10, it's Alabama. This year it was Georgia. And for the Pac-12, there's not a team that cannot stumble, so to speak. There's no team good enough that can avoid that upset loss or avoid losing that game that they shouldn't have lost. For Oregon last year, it was losing to Stanford that kind of set the tone for the rest of the season. I mean, they beat Ohio State on the road. That's a great win. That should have been honestly, it was their toughest game of the year. But then the rest of the season happens, and it's like, what happened? Like, was that a different team? I mean, you beat one of the best teams in the nation, and then you turn around and lose to Stanford. And I know Utah was good, but then, Ohio State beat Utah in the bowl game, and Oregon loses to Utah twice. So maybe they need Lincoln Riley to come into USC to dominate the Pac-12 to get the Pac-12 into the playoffs. Otherwise, you're just going to, come up short every year.
That Oregon win over Ohio State is the only thing that kept the Pac-12 in any kind of conversation the entire season.
Yep.
If Oregon did not win that game, the rest of the conference was toast by about week 3. It was completely discarded by the college football playoff. And if they wouldn't have beaten Ohio State, that kept them in the conversation the whole season until they lost to Utah. Whenever that was, it was late in the season. It was only about 2-3 games left that they lost to Utah that first time.
Yep.
And otherwise, nobody would have talked about Pac-12 football. Not that many people did, but that Oregon win over Ohio State kept them relevant for as long as possible. The thing about perception of conferences that I think, Chris, is that the way it lays out for the SEC and also the Big 10 is a good look. Meaning, if you're the Pac-12 and everybody beats up on each other and you got a bunch of 7 and 5 teams, that's not a good look. Nobody cares. Nobody sees anybody challenging the elites. If you've got a ACC situation that we had for 5 or 6 years where Clemson beats everybody up, nobody else looks any good, and it's just Clemson. Okay, we penciled them into the playoff before the season starts. Okay, Clemson's going to be there because nobody's going to beat them in the ACC. Okay, that's not a good look. Where the Big Ten and the SEC look good is they usually have an elite, if not two, and then they got this tier of Penn State, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan State, this tier of Florida, Texas A&M, Auburn, these teams that are respectable, that are finishing top 10 to 15, 20 in the nation. And those two conferences just flood the top 25 because they might have one elite or two, and then they got a bunch of 9-4, 10-3 teams that look good.
Yeah.
Support the elite team so people look at the elite and say they're legit because they had to go through Penn State and Wisconsin and Minnesota and Purdue and Michigan State, or they had to go through Florida, Georgia, Texas A&M, Auburn, LSU, and Mississippi State.
That's why that win over Ohio State was so big for Oregon, because even when Oregon lost to Stanford, people, oh, that's okay. They beat Ohio State. So, if they would have just tripped that one time against Stanford, they would have been fine, because that win over Ohio State was so big that people were overlooking them and keeping them in the top 4. And then, of course, they lost again and again and again. So, yeah, that was their season. If they would have just slipped up one time, Stanford was really bad, yes, but the playoff committee and everybody else would have excused that because of the win against Ohio State. So that tells me that the Pac-12 needs to schedule more out-of-conference games like that. That way they can afford to stumble once, not more than once, but they can afford to stumble once. We saw it last year, great example. So if they can do that from here on out, that gives them a better chance of making the playoffs. Now, they have to avoid stumbling more than once. There's no way around that. But by scheduling these out-of-conference games, this year, Ohio State, maybe in Alabama, Georgia, whatever, and Oregon shows, hey, you can win those games, even if you're not the better team. For whatever reason, Oregon was the better team that game. That sets the rest of your schedule up to where you can afford one stumble. So the Pac-12 needs to look at what Oregon did last year and just try not to stumble more than once. That's the bottom line. They got to stop doing that.
We talk West Virginia football with everyone right here. Come on back next Friday night, 8 o'clock Eastern time. That's our set time. But sometimes we got to switch it up Saturday this week. So that means you subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live so you can keep up with us, as we've got about 4 of us trying to coordinate schedules. So sometimes we've got to change it up. But we make it here every week, typically on Friday night, West Virginia Live. Golden Blue Dude, I wanted to hit you up with an article that just came out 4 hours ago. This is on Mountaineers Now, and this comes from Neil Brown's news conference after practice today of just some players that stood out to him and just some of your thoughts. So Neil Brown had good things to say at running back with Tony Mathis and Justin Johnson. Anything there?
Sorry, my kids distracted me there for a second. Say that again.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Neil Brown, after practice today, was talking about who stood out. So we went to running back first with Tony Mathis and Justin Johnson.
Yeah. I mean, that's a little surprising. They were talking about the speed of Lynn J. Dixon in the backfield. I know Tony Mathis has been progressing, and maybe the offensive line is a little bit better. But I mean, that's really good news, because that means the bar is going to be really high. And Lynn J. will complement him very well. And West Virginia, that was one thing that we were missing last year, was the running game. I mean, Letty did all he could, but he wasn't a quick runner. In fact, from what I heard in the combine, he was the slowest running back at the combine. So that tells you that the schemes that they drew up for Letty Brown were pretty good schemes. And if you have the offensive line coming together, because they're all going to be back this year, and Tony Mathis getting praised like he is, and Lynn J. Dixon is as fast as he is. And let me say something else about Lynn J. Dixon. He has a lot of confidence. I heard him tell the coach that if he gives him the rock 3 times consecutively, he has confidence that he's going to take it to the house within those three gives. So we have a guy that's quick, we have a guy that's progressing, and we have a guy that has confidence. That bodes well for the running game, and maybe it'll take a little bit of pressure off the passing game, because I think that was one of the biggest issues with our offense last year is I think our passing game had maybe too much pressure, and maybe Jarrett Daggy was forcing things that he shouldn't have been forcing. He wasn't reading the field very well either. That doesn't help. But, having a good run game is going to help have a good passing game. So I'm really glad to hear that.
Then we've got at wide receiver, Neil Brown said today, Preston Fox. The kid makes plays. He catches the ball, gets himself in good position.
Nice.
The quarterbacks have a lot of trust in him. He said Sam James made a huge play, and he also said Caden Prather probably at 200-plus yards. I mean, he looked like a guy that we really see. Yeah,
I was surprised to hear Fox's name, but Prather and Sam James kind of expected, and I'm glad that Sam James lost confidence in 2020. That's when he lost his confidence. And last year, okay year, but starting to gain it back. So hopefully he's getting that confidence back, because Sam James has the capability of being a big-time receiver. It's just the mental game with him gets him down. Caden Prather, I've already predicted this. I expect this to be his breakout year. I think he's going to have a better quarterback, and I think the offensive coordinator Graham Harrell is going to make it to where he does have a breakout year. The dude is athletic. He was a 4-star recruit, one of the better wide receivers we've recruited in a long time. My eyes, as far as wide receivers go, Caden Prather is the guy that I'm looking at for 2022.
Okay. Offensive line, according to Neil Brown. I thought the left side of our line, really from our center over, played really well. Frazier continues to set the standard up there. Wyatt Millum at left tackle played really well. And then James Minter. He's been consistent, has had a great offseason. I'm excited about how he played today.
That's kind of expected, because I knew they were going to move Wyatt Millum to the left side. So I'm really not surprised that he's saying that our strong side of the offensive line is going to be the left side. And that's, you're just going to have to accept it how it is. The strongest part of our offensive line will be the left side. So hopefully, we just have a good rotation on that right side, and those guys can gel together. Left side's good to go.
Defensive line, Torres Simmons had a really good day. He had multiple sacks. Coach Jackson kind of challenged him coming into the day. He didn't have one of his better days on Thursday, but I thought he was really good. Jordan Jefferson playing in the middle. That's a guy that continues to get better. He misses the first couple of days with an injury, but he's back now for all of this week, and I thought he was a difference maker on the interior today.
That's good to hear. The biggest thing that I'm going to be listening for now is with Akeem Mesidor out, I'm going to see what type of analysis Neil Brown has on Jordan Jefferson, because that's the guy that's going to take his spot. And Jefferson's very athletic. Not sure about if he'll be able to get as much pressure as what Akeem Mesidor was able to get on the quarterback, but he'll definitely affect the run more. See, that's people got to realize with defensive linemen, they have different strengths and different weaknesses. The thing with Akeem Mesidor was getting to the quarterback and tackles for a loss. And with Jordan Jefferson, it's the run game, stuffing that run game. So, if he can develop his pass rush a little bit better, then, he might not even miss a beat. So I'm going to be keeping my ear out on what Neil Brown has to say about Jefferson.
Joey Foster, appreciate the Super Chat, man. Thank you so much for that. It's a Super Chat challenge from Joey. All right, come on, everyone, support the live show. Mike linebacker Lee Pogba, KPOGBA.
Yep.
He showed out today. All right.
I've been expecting that. I do think that Lance Dixon will be the leader, but Lee, he's going to be a force. I think they're going to use him a lot more in pass coverage, because he has a lot more length than people realize. So I've actually been waiting on something like that to break out.
And then in the secondary, Charles Woods continues to make a bunch of plays. And Marcus Floyd at the safety position was really physical today in the run game. He had an interception.
That's what I'm talking about. Marcus Floyd, people did not talk enough about that guy. He was All-American from Murray State. And, West Virginia fans really freaked out whenever Nick Troy Fortune, our cornerback, entered the transfer portal. Last year, he went down with an injury with about 5 or 6 games left. Charles Woods comes in, and that side that Nick Troy covered got better because of Charles Woods. So, I didn't freak out when Nick Troy hit the transfer portal. I think he knew that he didn't fit the scheme and that Charles Woods was going to win the starting position. And, of course, Neil Brown singing the praises of Charles Woods. I like our cornerbacks. I really do.
Okay. So that is the latest from West Virginia practice on Saturday.
I'm interested to see who we're going to stick back there to return kicks, because one of West Virginia's glaring weaknesses last year was special teams. I'm not talking about the kicker. We had a good kicker as far as field goals, and our punter was halfway decent. I'm talking about flipping the field, kick coverage, tackles, and returning kickoffs and punts. And I've been saying it from day one. I like Moo. I like Jacoby Spells. And I even like Lynn J. Dixon back there to receive punts, because those guys are some of the quickest guys we have on our team. And we need somebody that can give us some explosive plays on special teams as well. West Virginia's been very consistent on defense, up and down on offense, and just playing bad on special teams. So if we can have a year where our special teams steps up to the plate and can, not necessarily return one to the house, but flip the field consistently, then there's going to be a lot more games that's going to go in the favor of West Virginia. I mean, that was the biggest thing in the Minnesota bowl game, in the guaranteed rate bowl game against Minnesota. That's why I predicted Minnesota to beat us soundly, because I looked at the stats. We were bottom of the barrel when it came to field position, and Minnesota was near the top. And so we were behind the 8 ball before the game even started.
Also, Joey's letting us know, and everyone else, that GBD has a website and merchandise store. So tell folks about that.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited about that.
So it's right there at goldenbluedude.com.
People don't realize Joey does a lot for this brand right here. So I definitely appreciate Joey.
No doubt. He is here for us. Absolutely. So that's goldenbluedude.com. And you see where they've got 8 staff writers over there.
Yep.
Pumping out some content. So check it out.
Very excited about it.
Very cool. Very cool.
So what you been up to recently? What's on the agenda for Mark Rogers?
Well, we're going to do some coaches rankings this week. So we did all-time program rankings that ended last week and wrapped that up. Now we're going to release our coaches rankings in every conference, all 5 conferences, then put together a top 10.
Nice. I like it.
So we shall see where Neil Brown stacks up in the Big 12.
Last year I did a logo bracket ranking, like the March Madness. So I did videos and matched up logos and had subscribers and viewers vote. Last year they voted Boise State as the best logo in the nation.
Really?
Yeah. It was between Boise State and Iowa. Those were the top 2. But that was only the 130 logos in FBS football. This year, I'm doing all 300. I think it's 356, 357, whatever logos. In college basketball. So I'm doing that, and I'm starting to do my schedule rankings from easiest to toughest. I'll probably start with the SEC, and it's really surprising because I remember doing the rankings last year as far as schedules go, and I had Arkansas at the very top. I think they had the toughest schedule in the nation, and this year they do not have the toughest schedule in the SEC. So Arkansas could make a move in the SEC West. I'm telling you right now.
Well, the only thing I would say about Arkansas' schedule last year, they of course had Texas non-conference, and they had Georgia, so they don't have to play Georgia this year. I don't know what that cycles to. Arkansas plays Missouri out at the East every year, and then the other game rotates. So I don't know who comes up this year, but it's certainly not Georgia.
Right. That's one of the things that put them, and their road slate was brutal last year.
See, I used to do the same thing every offseason. I would rank all the Power 5 schedules, and I'd rank them, whatever it is, 65 teams, 65 all the way up to number 1.
Yep.
But I didn't do that last year, and I don't think I'm doing it this year.
Well, for me, it's more like in the conference. Like,
Yeah.
I don't rank them all head-to-head. I just rank them against each other in the conference. It's a little bit easier that way.
Yeah, maybe I'll go with that because it
Well,
gets
and
you
you
kind of
gotta
cross-eyed
use
trying to
categories
figure out.
too. You got to use categories too because they play the same team. So the way I broke it down was the first category is out of conference. That's where you can compare games. The second one is road games, and then the third category is cross divisional games. So there's where you're going to find your differences.
Sure. Absolutely. Not so much in the Big 12. Now, in the Big 12, everybody plays everybody. So it's
Big
pretty much
12 is out of conference and road games. That's it.
Yep. And then, but if you look at the SEC, shoot, you get 14 teams. So everybody's got a possible 13 opponents, but they only play 8 games. So that 5 teams that you don't play really changes things up and makes for a large disparity.
It depends on if you draw road games for your out of conference, because this year Vanderbilt drew 6 road games and most of the other SEC teams only drew 4. Now, last year Auburn had 5 because they had to go on the road to Penn State, but this year they get Penn State at home, so their road games I think dropped down to 4. And that's a big difference. 2 extra road games. I know Vanderbilt sucks. Vanderbilt sucks anyways. But if you were comparing teams on the same level, a team, with 2 extra road games, that's massive.
Now that you say that, that's funny that I say that I wasn't going to tackle schedule previews because I built a content schedule. I've never done this before, but I built a content schedule the other day, and I put for the week of 4-4, so this coming Monday, coaches rankings in the Power 5. Then the week of the 11th, I put schedule previews. And then, that's going to take more than a week. That's going to take forever. And then I'm going to go through since we're pretty much at that point, late April, past spring practice and the spring games, I'm going to go through every position in the country and rank quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers on down the line.
Wow.
We've done that.
To do that. That's a lot of work right there, man. I applaud you on that.
Well, we've done that in the past, Chris, where I will rank like the top 5 or the top 10 in every conference, and then I'll put it all together and do a top 10 nationally. So you figure if there's like 11 positions, 5 conferences, that's 55 videos.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I mean, I get it all done.
Well, last year I kind of figured out the hard way that I need to start probably by the end of April if I want to get through all the preview and predictions, because I want to get through as many teams as possible. Last year I think I got like 50, maybe 55. So I'm going to have to start a little bit earlier this year. I probably still won't get them all unless I like double down and do 2 teams in one video. But I would like to at least get all the Power 5s.
Yeah. That's another thing, previews and predictions. Yeah.
People don't realize that. I mean, I love that the busy time is as long as it is, but you do not get a break. It doesn't matter, that the season is not ongoing. There's a lot of stuff to do in the off season. And
all of that is just minus anything happens. Anything happens. Yeah, and
another thing is putting a video together isn't like you're sitting down in front of a camera and it takes 10 minutes and you put it out, boom. I mean, it takes,
Sure.
Especially with you doing live shows all day. I mean, it can take half the day, maybe all the day sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Well, it's good to see you.
You too.
Chris played a little hurt tonight, so we appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, it's severe cold, maybe a flu. I had a fever on and off, but I'm good, man. I enjoy doing this anyways.
Yeah, it's always fun. All right, folks, please support us here at the West Virginia channel, Voice of College Football. Get on over to the Gold and Blue Dudes YouTube channel, also his website, goldandbluedude.com. And we should have Travis and Justin back here next week. Some combination of us will show up for your West Virginia show. And again, please subscribe to our West Virginia channel.
By the way, Roger Dodger, I actually do have a Davy Crockett hat. The coonskin hat. I got one.
Like any West Virginia fan should.
Absolutely. That is a requirement.
Nice. All right, Roger Dodger and everybody else, we appreciate you being here. We will see you back next week for West Virginia Live.